Judgment, being judged, making decisions based upon our judgment. When we look at other people, we all make assumptions right away. We judge them. I do it. I'm still guilty of it. I assess people all the time. Most of the time, whether they're a threat or not a threat, I can't help it. When we look at people, we look at how they're dressed, what they drive, where they live, who they hang out with, who they got married to, all kinds of things that we make decisions about or judge. We judge them. And so whether we're right or wrong is not for us to do it. What we need to do is figure out how we're going to get people closer to the Lord. Whatever way that they're going or anything else, how do we bring them closer to the Lord? And so it's not easy. It's not an easy thing. It can be very daunting. It can be, sometimes we can get embarrassed. So I was thinking about my life and the way that I grew up and was judged as a little kid because I moved a lot. My mom and dad ran off to Oklahoma. My mom was 16, my dad was 17, and they ran off to Oklahoma to get married because you didn't have to have anybody's permission. You could just go there and get married at 16. My mother was not pregnant. My dad in the Air Force, when they got married, after they moved to Tennessee, that's where I was born, and then they came back to Arkansas, where my mother did, and then he got stationed in Texas, and then he got sent to Vietnam in the Air Force. He was an air policeman, he wasn't in combat, but I think it still had quite an effect on him. When he came back from Vietnam, my mom and dad got divorced. I lived with my dad for a while when he started the University of Arkansas. And as a little kid, he took me around. I went to a lot of anti-war rallies when I was a kid. And I also saw a lot of veterans that had come back. We were one time up at like a folk art festival in the Ozarks, and there was a guy there that had two stumps for arms and could not see and had horrible scarring all over his face, and he was building pottery. And he was a veteran, and for whatever reason, he just started throwing a fit. And I remember this as a little kid, and I was like, oh, and I had no idea. And to him, people were looking at him in his perceived whatever state he was in, and he just threw a big fit. And I remember my dad going over and talking to him, and the guy eventually calmed down, but it made a pretty big impression on me about the way people were looking at him. And so I'm living with my dad, me and my brother are living with my dad. My dad is drinking more heavily all the time. And so it's becoming kind of out of control, so we go back to live with my mother. My mother has met somebody else, and now we're moving to Germany, who was in the army at the time. So when I get to Germany, I'm a little kid, so it's all new. And as you know, little kids judge little kids, and we get judged. And it was a pretty rough time. And I learned to speak German pretty well, and so that was one thing that I got out of it. And but when I came back, we moved back to Arkansas, and I had a really, really funny accent, and so and I was little, so I got in a lot of fights, which was all right. It's part of who I am now. But I remember people looking at me as a little kid and making decisions upon me based upon my mother being divorced, my dad being an alcoholic, small town. Nothing, as you guys, we all know, nothing escapes anybody. And so they make decisions and judgments based upon stuff that they probably really have no concept of what's really going on. My mother, went to nursing school after all of this and became a nurse, but my mom married somebody else again because that guy wasn't what she was looking for, and so we moved again, and so I went to a place in Springfield, Missouri, and it was a horrible place where we were living. And her husband, Jim, at the time was a paramedic or EMT, I'm not sure which, but he later went to the police academy. And it was not a very friendly part of the town that we lived in. And I remember it was always, and this is Springfield, Missouri, back in the 70s, and you would not think, but it was a pretty bad place. And so we lived there for a while, and then we moved down to Joplin, Missouri, and then we went back to Arkansas. And so going from all these different places, at least my mother, she put me in Pee Wee football, and she made sure I went to church. So I got to go to a lot of different churches, and because I usually had to have a shuttle to pick us up because my mom usually worked on weekends. And so I got to see, as a little kid, a lot of different things and learn how people's perceptions of how they look at you and where you are and everything else. And I became pretty judgmental too of people. I don't know why, but I did. And so maybe it was just a guard against stuff. But anyway, I don't think I was a bad person. I don't think my mother was a bad person. She just liked to get married. And so we went through this one more time. She married a police officer from Kansas City, and we moved to Kansas City. And luckily, he was a really good guy. That was where I was. That was by sixth grade. So my mom has been married 4 times by the time I'm in sixth grade. I've had a lot of different places that I've lived. It can be very, to me, it was probably pretty normal, and my brother. But luckily, my real dad's mother would come and get us in the summer, and we'd spend the summer with her on the farm. And so that was always the same, and so that was pretty good. My grandmother was probably the least judgmental of all people that I've ever met. She could hang out with anybody. Her and my mother always remained really, really close. In fact, when my mother had a stroke, that's who she lived with, was my dad's mom. And so that gave me the other side of things. But when we moved to Kansas City, and I could read pretty well, but for whatever reason, the teacher that's class they put me in the special education class. I have no idea why. Maybe I was a smart aleck, I don't know. But anyway, they put me in there. And when I got into the special education class and the teacher was having us all read, and I started reading, she goes, "You shouldn't be in here." So then she went and got the other teacher, and they were having a big argument out in the hallway. Then the principal got involved. And so then when I got put back in the other class, you can imagine what's the matter with that kid. And so I know what it's like for people to look at you and judge. And I'm not telling you this story to... it's not coming out right the way I'm... It's just that I know what it's like to be judged, and yet I still was on the other end of that as I got older, judging people on all kinds of things that I probably did, and I was not a very nice little kid as I got older, and so I probably didn't get nicer until I was older. I didn't mind going to work and doing that sort of thing, but I made decisions, and I judged people, and people judged me, and maybe that's why I was that way. I don't know. But I was kind of rebellious and and not very good. But it all worked out. And I'm here today through all of those things, and it doesn't matter how you start out. Luckily, I had a few different mentors when I was younger that helped me find my way back to God, find my way in life a little bit, and make decisions. My grandmother, Randy Bradley, who brought me back to God. And so, but if I'd went with the way that people were judging me, it would not turned out as well as I think it did, and that's okay. But so when we're looking at people, we need to look at them in a way that, like, whatever their troubles, their foibles, or whatever else, and sometimes it's hard, especially with some people like you think, well, maybe I shouldn't give them the time of day, or it's just not worth it. It doesn't help. But you never know when you can bring somebody to God, and it doesn't matter where they live, what they drive, how much money they have or don't have, who they hang out with. You might be able to say something to them to change them and bring them to God. And so that's all we can do. If we base our assumptions on just something that we see in the moment, then that's not the way we should look at people. God is going to judge us for our behavior, and I'm gonna read those verses here and again in a minute. As John put it out last week, we don't need to make these messages super long. We just need to make them count. And when we give a message, and so I was probably going to do this longer, but I just got kind of overwhelmed with some stuff. So I'm going to read Corinthians 5:10 again. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive what is due to him for the things done while in the body, whether good or bad. And so that's who's going to be the ultimate judge. And I'm not talking about the kind of judgments that Tom made as a judge. I'm just talking about the judgments that we make as people. And some of us sometimes we look at something and we think we perceive it the way it is or whatever else, and that's nothing like that. And so always give people a chance. Don't just take what you think you know or don't know and just give them a chance. And I think sometimes we can make people come to God in a way that maybe we didn't think we could be able to bring them to it in the first place. On Matthew 7:1-15. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. So that's pretty strong right there. God in His Word gives us a good way to look at that better than we can. But as people, we can't help it. We can't help but look at somebody and say, oh my gosh, look at that. Can you believe that? Can you believe that, Linda? Can you see that over there? And so I'm gonna pick on Brandon for a minute. Brandon just moved here from California. We cannot help.
That was the whole point.
And so, but if you met Brandon, so no. Brandon and his wife Liz are really good people. Eric came here from California, and Nana. So we can't all be from the right place, but so don't judge people on things on a general thing, and just hope that we can talk people into becoming closer to God, or try to understand. When I was little and I went to all those different churches, as a little kid, I heard the story of Noah and Moses and all those, but on other things, all the preachers, some of them, like, that is the only way that you're going to get to God, is if you listen to what I say. And if you don't listen to what I say, you're not going to get to God. And we still do that today. People say, if you don't do it this way, or my interpretation is better than your interpretation. And so the Word is the Word. And if it speaks to your heart and you can get closer to God, then it works. I have met people, Catholics, Mormons, Jewish people, all of them believe that their God was the best God. And that's all right. If that works for them and they think they're going to go to heaven and they believe and they do the right thing, then they probably will. It's not for me to say. God will decide whether or not they get to get into heaven. That's not for me. All I can do is like, all right, that's one way to do it. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's always correct or always right. And I'm not the one to say whether it's correct or right. That's not for me to decide. That's for God to decide. And hopefully I'm living my life, and we're all living our life where we can get to heaven. If we don't, and for the people that don't believe, and I try to explain it, I said, what's the harm in believing? What does that hurt? Do you, and like, well, it's intellectually, I said, no, that's not a good argument either. Intellectually, the Bible is true in so many in every way that you can't argue with that, especially if you start going through the historical part of it. And so I try not to judge them. I sometimes like, hell is not going to be much fun. And so I'm reading on with those verses. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and then turn and tear you to pieces. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks and receives, he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks the door will be opened. As somebody else said in theirs, I am not the most biblically scholarly person that you will ever meet. But as I read it, my family Bible when I was little, because it had really good pictures, there were things that it spoke to me as a little kid. And I think God was looking after me the whole time. And every once in a while, he'd kind of smack me on the head, and luckily, I am where I am today. And so the judgments that when we look at other people, try to open your heart a little bit sometimes when we do that. And it's not always easy. I know I am not always easy. And so it's just one thing that we can do. Which of you, if his son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. So there have always been false prophets, and always people that say, if you follow me and lead me or do what I do, then you're going to get there. But that's not always the case. And so it's up to us as Christians and people and human beings to make right decisions and not be the judges that we most of us are. We can't help it. We just can't help it. But try to just think about that in a little different way. And that's all I have to say. Let's go to prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for giving me this privilege to spread your word and to speak in front of my family here in Shell Church. Just watch over us as we go about the rest of this Memorial Day weekend, and remember all the sacrifices that the people in our country have made, that we could all be here and live the way we do. In Jesus Christ we pray, amen.